Good morning. Thank you all for joining us for our virtual Waco Day in Austin. We are so glad you are here. We have a great, wonderful lineup of speakers that are going to join us and share some of what's happening in Austin with us. But first, I would like to introduce our President and CEO, Matt Meadors. Hi, Matt.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you all so much for taking time from your schedules to join us for our virtual Waco Day in Austin gathering today. We really appreciate you being a part of today's gathering, and just want to take a moment to extend my warmest thanks to all of our sponsors. We talk about this all the time. Many of you have joined us for many events and gatherings, and we just can't do these things without our sponsors. You folks are the best, and we appreciate you. In particular, warm thanks to Texas State Technical College for serving as our presenting sponsor. Mclennan Community College is our gold sponsor. Capstone Mechanical is our silver sponsor, and Hobbs Bonded Fibers as our bronze sponsor. We have a great lineup of speakers today, so I'm not going to take much more time. Let me simply segue into introducing Jennifer Manning. Jennifer is with Patilla Brown and Hill, as everybody knows, and she is your chamber's current chairperson, and she is doing a fabulous job. Jennifer, it's hard to believe that we're already moving into May. Last year, it seemed like it was going so slow because of the challenges with the pandemic and all the challenges our community was facing in this organization. For some reason, it just feels like this year's flying, and maybe that's a good sign because it sure does feel like the economy is getting ready to really go fast here in Greater Waco. So Jennifer, thank you so much for your leadership, and I'll turn the program over to you, and Jennifer's going to serve as our MC today. Jennifer, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We are still operating in a virtual world, and while we love going down to Austin and enjoy that experience, we hope you enjoy our virtual experience today. As Matt and Jennifer mentioned, we do have some great speakers. And really, as I was kind of thinking about this during the last week and looking at our leaders in Texas and how they've been so integral to everything that was happening within the last year, whether that was, statewide or just even here in Waco, Mclennan County, they have been true friends to our chamber, to our city, to our county. They've been, great resources for us to use. And I honestly can't say enough about how that makes us feel as part of the chamber, knowing that we have great resources that really care about us in Austin, and we can't say enough about that. So thank you. I'll just put that out there just on a personal note. As I mentioned, the chamber is very active, and we are very excited about coming out of COVID and looking forward to the last half of the year as we hopefully get back together. As many of you know, each year we come up with a public policy our public policy committee that is working diligently behind the scenes that sometimes goes unnoticed if you're not aware of it, but they do a great job in coming up with priorities that we have for our community. And as we grow and have had great success from our economic development over the last few years, those things become even more important. And so as we're looking at growing our workforce, broadband issues, redistricting, diversity, equity, and inclusion, all of these things are important parts of our growth and our success in that growth. And so you'll hear from our public policy chair, Ryan Lindsay, a little bit later, and he'll share more on those issues, but know that that is something that the chamber takes very seriously, and it couldn't be done without our Texas leaders. So thank you so much for that. We will jump right into it. We already have State Representative Kyle Casale on the line, and we will begin with introducing him. Do we want to bring his video up? There we go. Good morning.
Good morning. How's everybody doing?
Good, good. Thank you so much. Let me give you a quick introduction. I'm sure so many that are on the line already know you. Mr. Casale is a longtime resident of Brazos County and was first elected in November 2012 to the Texas House of Representatives, representing House District 12. Graduated from Texas A&M in 1992 and received his certification of ranch management from TCU. And he's really devoted his life to preserving the land and contributing to local and state economies. During the most recent legislative session, Representative Casal was appointed to the House Committee on Environmental Regulation, as well as the Natural Resources Committee. And just on a personal note, I will say that, Kyle, you've been so easily accessible to our leadership group, and I really appreciate that. And I hope you know that means a lot to us, and it's more than just you being a representative and us coming to you when you need someone. I think when we need someone, I think we feel that personal connection, and we really appreciate you hopping in there and really making things happen for us. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I will turn it over to you.
Well, Jennifer, thank you. We alluded this into the pregame. I have had the most incredible opportunity to get to know so many good people in Waco, and these relationships went from, constituent to, I don't know what's going on. Y'all hear the echo as well, or is it just me?
There's no echo.
Okay,
You should be good now. Yep.
Well, I apologize, but you talk about coming to a city that is unique. It's in the heart of Texas. You guys do everything right. You have solutions for your problems, and it's easy for me as a representative of your town, your county, to make things happen because you know what you want done, you know where you're headed, you have goals, and you want to be the premier city in Texas. You are the jewel right in the middle. And those constituent relationships went from representative constituent to friendship, and it's a lot easier to work with your friends, and it's a lot more motivating to take care of your friends that feel more like family. I know that you look at the sponsor list, I think I've seen or talked to everybody on that list the entire session. And so thank y'all for being as reciprocating to me and open arms and open heart. It's too easy when you're working with people you love. So with that being said, the 87th session, wow. Pandemic, snowstorm, we got redistricting coming. I think you hit the highlights. Session has gone along a lot better than we thought. It is different. We miss seeing you guys here. What a great day. When you look at Mclennan County, the best day in the Texas House or in the legislative session is West Day. I've got 180 colleagues, governor and lieutenant governor included, wondering where all their cola are. They have not been fed properly. Mclennan County shines on that day. You shine when you come with the chamber. And our priority list, broadband, let's start there. Rural broadband as a whole, the pandemic showed us that even our urban areas have black holes, and students need to learn. And then you go to the telemedicine aspect and what we've been able to do, and bills passing throughout the last couple of weeks that enhance broadband and enhance our opportunities for education and rural medicine. Doc Anderson, of course, has been at the forefront of that. I think he's had some vital pieces of legislation. We put up a broadband office in the governor's office through, I think that was HB 5, which is just going to be paramount. We've been working with Matt and a group on the Waco Industrial Foundation. We found a little hitch in our giddy up. We found a vehicle for that through HB 988, working with Representative Shine and Senator Hancock. So, some of these victories we were looking for, we're going to find a path. And at the beginning of this session, whether you were the teachers, a different economic engine in the state, I told most everybody, narrow down your priorities from 10 to 3. And if we get one, we're going to be happy. And if I look at Waco and Mclennan County, we're going to come out with, 5 to 10 victories. And that's not only good for Waco, Mclennan County, that's good for Texas. So hats off to your hard work and your teams that have helped Doc and Senator Birdwell and I work through this crazy legislative session. The budgetary process went relatively easy. I'm going to give hats off to the Senate. It sounds like we're all moving in the right direction and working together because we are. We had a limited number of funds to work with. Senator Nelson did a good job. The House Appropriations Committee, led by a new appropriations chair, Dr. Bonin, have done a good job with his sub-chairs, and they are moved into conference committees and working down the right path. You look at the state of Texas, I mean, we are growing at an unprecedented rate. We're at almost 29 million people. We have 2 congressional seats. And so that leads us into redistricting. Who will represent Mclennan County and Waco next time? You're going to have to stay tuned till October. I think we got some initial numbers the other day, but we haven't drilled down on what those Texas numbers look like. So we will, I think, start in a special session, best guess and best scenario looks like October, and we'll get into those redistricting maps. So if you're a numbers and a statistical, it's time to start playing with population numbers and look where we are. My hope and prayer is to keep my district as closely, I hope it looks the same. I really do. I love having that east side of Mclennan County. As you all know, I've already loved on west enough and Mayor Mushka, but that's family. We jumped into a fire together with the explosion and 13, and it's just, wow. How do you give that up? I want to make sure I find some population, because I think House District 12 needs population. I love the fact that it emulates our congressional district. It gives Waco and Bryan College Station an opportunity to have 2 state reps, a couple senators, and a congressman that can put it all together and make sure our needs from the state and federal government are met. And it's a unique opportunity. That Highway 6 Central Texas corridor is an incredible economic engine. If you followed the budget, we had one amendment on there where we voted to make sure that the entire legislative body got to pull down the federal funds. And there was a letter from the governor the other day that showed us that we're going to get 11.2 billion federal money for our schools. We've already received 2.2 billion of that, and that's going to be incredible opportunity. Those schools need that from the COVID/virtual learning curve that we had to manage and work through. And we can't hesitate when we educate our kids. They need to get on that path to education, and they do not need stumble blocks. We don't need hurdles. We need to move forward, get those kids educated so they can be successful. And if you look at all the education opportunities in Waco, whether it's the great schools, it's the Guama program, and then TSTC, and having Baylor and Mclennan Community College in your neighborhood. There's not a better place to get educated. You have every option available to make sure children are educated and have an opportunity to succeed in whatever field they want. And you all give them those opportunities through your sponsorships, your commitment to your community, and your volunteerism. It's truly amazing. We got a few more days to go. The session feels normal now. The last 2 weeks, committee meetings are going late. We're staying on the floor late. Thursdays have become the day. I mean, you get here early on Thursday morning and you plan to stay late. And yesterday was no exception. We took care of 2 or 3 major bills. So we had a couple that got sidetracked for a little bit. So next week will be tough and meaningful. But from a standpoint of people working together and getting along, it has been overwhelmingly optimistic. I mean, I'm overwhelmed that everybody's focused on getting things done. And when you come into session with COVID and the ERCOT issue, and we buckle down and we work together, it's a true statement of how Texans truly want Texas to be the best state in the union. I need to take a sip of coffee. Jennifer, I don't know if I need to continue or you want me to stand by for a few questions, but once I wet my whistle, I'll be able to go another 5 minutes or so.
That sounds good. Jennifer, can you turn me back on if you don't mind, please? I'm not able to start my video on my end, but I'll just say thank you so much for those comments. Kyle, if there are any questions, feel free to forward those to Jennifer Branch or put those in the chat. We would love to hear from our participants that are on the line. I'll just say kind of one thing, I think as you were kind of sharing, so much of it seems to, of course, what we're doing here. Okay, now I can get back on.
There you are.
There we go. So much obviously is being, is in response to COVID and so many of the things that happened, and whether that's through education and the broadband, things that were kind of came to the forefront during that time. So are there things too that, had COVID not happened, were there things that you thought, Kyle, these were kind of things that you saw would go through, as priorities for you going forward? And maybe once we're finished with this session, things that you see going forward in the next few years as priorities for you?
We have local priorities that I focus on, having that unique opportunity, like I laid out the political groundwork with the 2 state reps, the senators, and the congressional. So I try to help focus on those 3 middle counties and the rural access and infrastructure, and make sure we've got everything they need to be successful. Rural Texas to me is still the backbone of Texas, and those communities need to thrive. We need to make sure their schools are doing well. So education's been at the forefront. We've got to get good teachers and give those kids opportunities to learn in those rural areas. But we're doing well. I mean, we're very blessed to be in sandwiched between Waco and College Station. Bodes well for Robertson, Limestone, and Falls counties. I mean, it gives them an opportunity to be small, but they don't have to go to Houston, Dallas, or Austin. They've got Waco and College Station that have everything they can need. However, some of my priorities, unfortunately, you turned me to a sad note. And, when we lost Damon Allen and Thanksgiving, and then we lost Chad Walker, another DPS officer in Limestone County, we've been the last 2 sessions, we've been focused on bail reform. And I know I got a little work to do with some of my friends and attorneys and judges in Mclennan County. And, we've been working with the JPs, but I think certain judges and magistrates need the opportunity to deny bail. And I have a HJR that goes along with Andy Murr's HB 20 that is about bail reform. We no doubt bail bondsmen need to be a integral part of that, and the courts need to be able to do what they need to do. But when you have a bad individual that creates heinous crimes, judges need the tool and toolbox to deny them bail. And that's what we're doing. And HJR 4 for me actually came out of committee yesterday. So let's hope there's enough time on the calendar and the clock to get that to the floor. HB 20 hit the floor last week, and they pulled it down or postponed it. We have a companion in the Senate, but for those of you that follow legislation, a bill like HB 20 still needs the HJR to go with it, to give it the enforcement and the teeth to be effective, and to keep Texas safer. And that's our goal. We don't want to hobble the legal process. We just want to make Texas safer. And when that hits so close to home, I doubt, unfortunately, we'll hear about another officer altercation in the next few days. Let's hope it's not in Texas, but it's just they put their lives on the line, and I've got the back of our first responders every day, whether they're firemen, nurses, doctors, police officers. I feel an obligation to protect them because they protect us every day. So that's my biggest goal at the end of the session, is to get bail reform taken care of. Let's get this budget passed. Let's get to special session. I know that the governor will have when he makes a call for a special session, it'll be a need that Texas needs to tackle, and we'll get that done. And obviously, we've already talked about redistricting, and that's going to be fun, but that's a statistic numbers game. And I was on the Bryan College Station radio yesterday, and you can make a scientific statistical a map, and that's perfect. It makes everybody happy. But if you're an outside public and even a representative or elected official, when that map's done, and y'all know that word gerrymandering, it looks like a 5-year-old had a hot crayon and they drew a map, and we said that's perfect. And it doesn't make any sense, but there's going to be some concessions made for people to get what they want and what they need, and hopefully we'll do a good job, and it'll be a sound map. And for me, when I ran in 12 and 13, those maps were still in the courts. And so, a little 3-month trial election process that, I told my wife would take 4 months, ended up taking 11 months. But that was a benefit for Kyle HD 12, because that, like I started, that gave me 11 months to develop those relationships, get to know the people in the district, and of course leads me to where I am today, talking to some really good friends in Waco, Texas, that have become just advocates. And you all give me the ability to do good for you because I trust you, and you tell me you're a board of advisors that I can't work without, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much. We do have a question from one of our participants. Do you see any opportunity for property tax reduction with all of the federal money coming into the system currently?
Well, property tax, I mean, the governor and both bodies talk about it every day. With the budget being so tight, it's going to be tough because our whole system is based on property taxes. I think we made some significant property tax reform last session, and it's just going to be tougher to do this time. But like I said, the conferees are in conference. Let's stay on top of that. And as well as I do, as soon as we see how they're leaning and we get those first conference committees coming out, you'll be the first to know what it looks like and how we're progressing.
Got it. All right. Any other questions? Jennifer Branch, do you have any questions on your end?
I haven't seen any questions on my side. We do have a comment that says, thank you. We appreciate your enthusiasm and your hard work for us. Love living here in Waco and all the exciting things happening here. That's from Bobby Horner at the City of Waco.
Excellent. Let's get 35 cleaned up and finished and get it where people enjoy pulling off the side of the road and spending some money as they go through this lovely state.
Hey, Kyle, it's Matt Meadors. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
I'm curious, have you had any surprises this session? Y'all work in committees and work together as you're moving forward for the session. Any surprises?
That's hard to say. There's surprises that are inside surprises for us elected officials, but from a standpoint of the process working and doing what we're supposed to do, it's been relatively smooth. The biggest surprise, since Senator Birdwell's coming up in a few minutes, is we've been giving them a hard time because they took a couple of weeks off, but they were very diligent in the front end where we were very calculated, I'll say. So we had two different approaches to moving into the COVID issues and the ERCOT or Snowmageddon. I can't ever figure out what we really need to call it. We need to settle on a term and stick with it. But when you have a ice storm come to the state of Texas for 5 or 6 days, it was kind of unique. But they knew what they wanted to do. They're a smaller body. They were able to manage that quickly. On the other hand, we're 150 members that are how do you say? I mean, sometimes you would think we're bipolar. So it takes a little longer to get us all on the same page and get us in the sandbox and work together. So two different techniques. We got there. Surprises is that the budget went through as quickly as it did and painlessly. Budget night is usually 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning, and we were out we were done at 10:15, but we had some perfecting amendments and some, you need to dot our I's and cross our T's. And I think we gavelled out at a little before 11. And, I think we were mostly, you say surprised, we were all shocked. How's that?
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Let's see. Any other questions? I think we're good there. Well, thank you so much, Kyle. I will say, I was with a group earlier this week of law enforcement leaders in Waco and Mclennan County, from the sheriff's office, from city police, and they feel the support. They feel the support of our community, and I know that's super important to them. And there's so many difficulties in law enforcement, and just knowing that that's a priority for you, I know is a comfort to them. And they they feel like Mclennan County, the city of Waco, that's it's different. They get the support from our community, and I think that just speaks volumes. And I'm so glad that that's definitely.
I'm going to add something. You reminded me of something that we have been able to be a part of, and of course your sheriff's one of the best in the country. But with law enforcement at the budget night, one of the things that I was able to help introduce, and then Senator Jane Nelson, head of Senate Finance, and the governor, but we added an amendment to add bulletproof windshields to DPS vehicles, which hopefully will roll down to sheriffs and constables and all police departments eventually. But that support backing our first responders was huge. And I can't thank everybody in the building for getting behind that. I can't thank Jane Nelson and the governor for supporting that. But, you know, like I said, I've gave you 2 instances in my district that happened in the last, unfortunately, the last few months and the last couple of years. And I don't want to see another one. I mean, those gentlemen and women that put their life on the line are pulling up to help you. I mean, if they pull you off the side of the road because you're speeding, it's for other people's safety. I know we don't like it. I know we're in a hurry, but God bless them, and they need to be safe doing their job, keeping us safe.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here this morning. We so appreciate it. I think we've taken a little more of your time than you originally committed to. So thanks for hanging in there with us. We so appreciate it.
You are very welcome. Like I said, this is friends and family, and it's never bad to stay long at your friend's house.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you feel that way. We feel the same.
Well, good.
Thank you so much.
Have a great weekend, and I can't wait to get back to Waco. So give us a few more. I think we got 5 more weeks, and we'll see you soon.
That sounds good. Thank you so much.
Congratulations to the national champions. I guess I hadn't been able to say that about the men's basketball team.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's been a great event, and it's kind of carried forward some great energy in our community, and we're thrilled for that team and for the boys.
Absolutely. Well, y'all have a great weekend. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you. All right. So originally in our schedule, we had Doc Anderson joining us this morning, but I think as Kyle alluded to, there are a lot of things going on this morning. And so from a scheduling perspective, he was unable to join us. We do have a little bit of time before Dr. McCown and our next speaker comes on. So we'll take a little bit of a break, maybe about 10 minutes, Matt, or
yeah,
how are you thinking?
In there, that's fine.
About 10 minutes?
Yeah.
And then we will be back on. All right, I think we are ready to get started. We have our next speaker ready to go. So we will start back. Thank you so much for hanging in there with us as we're working through scheduling issues. Obviously, we are thrilled to have these speakers, but we know they have very busy schedules. So we want to be aware of that, and we do our best to make it smooth, but thanks for hanging in there with us as we walk through it this morning. First, want to reach out and give a shout out to our gold sponsor this morning, Mclennan Community College. They are a great partner of the Chamber, a great community partner under the leadership of Dr. Johnette McCown. She is always has great words of wisdom and great knowledge to share with our Chamber group. And we so appreciate the role that MCC plays in our community, not just as a Chamber supporter, but as our community supporter and such a great vehicle for education for so many of our community members. So I will turn it over to Dr. McCown this morning to introduce our next speaker.
Mclennan Community College proudly provides a quality educational environment for jobs, careers, and also transfer to make a convenient, affordable education. Some of the things that we do is we train healthcare professions. Most of you know about our nurses, but we have respiratory therapists and PTs and occupational therapy, many of those areas. We train first responders, educators, social workers, engineers, cybersecurity technicians, accountants, and more. And then we have the University Center, you know, where we have Texas Tech and Tarleton with over 61 bachelor's and master's programs and a doctorate on our campus. Since 2001, at the beginning of the University Center, we have over 5,600 students. We also partner with 28 schools to offer transferable dual credit programs. And next month, we're going to have 75 high school students who are going to receive an associate degree before they complete high school. So MCC is a way for students to begin their lives debt-free after college. We also have many great scholarships, and this attracts many top high school students. We have the Honors College, Presidential Scholars, Rappaport First Generation, Julia Scholars, many others. And also our fine arts and athletics programs attract top talent. Adults can find a better way with a new start, and scholarships are available for skilling and reskilling, and that's exciting new things coming on right now, an express path to get a degree, a credential, or certificate very quickly. The days since March 2020, when we recognized the pandemic was real, have been and are challenging. But our community relationships and partnerships have demonstrated that our community is strong and resilient. Mclennan Community College is honored to be part of this journey. So this is a great time for us all to be together. We work well with Baylor University. I met a student just recently who is finishing her art degree at Baylor, and she is so excited and pleased. I was now prepared to introduce Senator Birdwell, but I don't think he's here yet. So I guess I'll just go ahead and Jennifer, you want me to talk a little bit more about us? I mean,
that would be great. Let me see. Jennifer Branch, is Senator Birdwell on? He was in the process of getting on, and I can see that there's a screen. I don't know if you can see that or not, Dr. McCown. So I think there's a screen where maybe he can.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about what's going on at MCC right now. We have a new program, Highlander Restart. If people have stopped out along the way, we know that that people in our community are going to earn more money if they finish the associate degree first, and if they earn a credential. Some things we don't offer, TSTC does offer. So it's kind of exciting to work together with Tech and Tarleton and Baylor and TSTC. MCC has been named a great college to work for, and we also were designated National Center of Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity. So we're very pleased about all those things. I see the senator has joined us now, and what a champion he is for all of us. There you are.
Hoorah.
Good
Thank
morning.
you, Madam President.
Hi,
Good
thank you.
morning. I apologize for being a smidgen late. I was on the phone with the corner office.
Oh.
I was breaking contact with the corner office so that I could try to be on time with y'all. So good morning,
Well,
Madam President. And I hope you got my thank you note. Thank you for hosting my Governor of the Day stuff in Waco last Saturday. So we
I
really
did.
very much appreciate it.
I did. I'm going to say just a few words. I think everyone has your bio. We know you very well. We know that you're a native Texan, a decorated military veteran. You survived the 9/11 terrorist attack on the Pentagon. And I'm so thankful when I take my students to DC and you come on my cell phone and talk to them about that experience. You're just always good to be available. You also, though, are an influential legislator. Chair, vice chair, you serve on 8 committees. And this legislative session, I'm not telling you something you don't know, that you're President pro tem of the Senate. And that's why also on Saturday, you have one day that you get to be governor. And we were honored that you chose to honor heroes in our area as governor for a day. I also know that your faith guides your life and your work ethic is unparalleled. I heard Representative Cassell say that he doesn't know who can follow you because you work so hard all the time. So I think you can learn the details about his bachelor, master's degree, all the wonderful things that he's done. But we would now, Senator, like to welcome you to Waco.
Hooah! Thank you. I greatly appreciate it, Madam President. Thank you so much. Let me cover a few quick things, if I may, and then just a couple of big policy areas that we've worked, and one that is still outstanding that we're working on that I think the chamber would be most interested in. Recently, in fact, it was just yesterday that the governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker announced that an additional $11.2 billion coming from Uncle Sam as it relates to education funding for a number of our school districts. Its total funding is about 2.2 billion already allocated, but now we're going to get another 11.2 billion in new additional federal funds as it relates to addressing COVID-19 pandemic and the impact that the pandemic had on public schools, because there has been a degradation in learning for our students. So this is nationwide allocation of dollars, and the state of Texas is going to get 11.2. About 2/3 of that is going to go this biennium, and then 1/3 of it will still remain at the discretion of the Department of Education in the next biennium. There's some other areas that I think particularly that local businesses would be interested in. Senate Bill 6 provides, which Senator Hancock carried, came out of the Senate 29-1. It's over in the House, but it deals with frivolous COVID-19 lawsuits. We've already had enough challenges with businesses that either did not survive or have been severely degraded. And what the bill does is prevent frivolous lawfare, so to speak, on COVID-19 lawsuits. So we wanted to make sure that local businesses or statewide, we didn't want businesses to start having the challenge of the frivolous COVID-19 lawsuits of I got COVID here or I got COVID there, when it is detrimental to the businesses, particularly as they operated inside the government promulgated standards and protocols. So those are a couple things that have been working. The biggest thing that I've worked this session is the SJR 45 and SB 1025, because the unique difficulty of COVID-19 demonstrated our structural weakness as it relates to how the legislature is in session in 5 months out of the 2-year biennium, and in 19 months out of that 2-year biennium, we're not in session. And our disaster and emergency chapters, chapter 418 and 433 respectively, were written for what is primarily a full-time legislature, because they came as model legislation back in 1975. I won't go into all the granularity of it, but the COVID-19 functionally demonstrated to us the weakness of the current structure of how emergencies and disasters and how they're responded to by the legislature. Chapter 418 says the legislature may end a disaster, declare an end of a disaster at any time. Well, we can only do that if we're gathered in. Well, we can only be gathered in constitutionally by the governor inviting us to come in. And so one of the things that, in fact, the Texas legislature was the very last legislative body gathered after COVID-19 hit our shores. So there are a number of challenges that come with that. The people's voice was functionally suppressed by us not being able to gather and provide guidance to the governor. And so making sure that businesses didn't close or the structures by which the governor made decisions. Look, I think Governor Abbott did very well in a very difficult and asymmetrical situation that we didn't have much of a precedent or how to handle these things. But I also think that having 19 months where the legislature is functionally silenced, the number of businesses that I spoke to, particularly in the alcohol beverage industry, Balcones in Waco, I mean, I can go down the list. We're very concerned at the orders and things given that did serious damage and degradation to respective businesses. And we want to make sure that the legislature is playing a predominant role in anything that is a future major impact disaster. And I'm working those bills now in the House. The thing that is on my mind right now is 313s. We do want to extend those. It's been a challenge in the Senate, so we're waiting on the House bills to come over. There are 2 bills right now in the House. One is an extension with some other additional data in it. It does keep solar and wind in there. I think that'll be a challenge in the Senate, but I think we've got to keep it there, just not because they add to the grid, though they don't add as much to the grid as we need based upon our experience with Mclennan back in February. But they do also add property value to many of the rural areas. And I know Waco sent me the Waco Chamber sent me the letter relating to that. But there's also a bill from Representative Meyer that's just a 4-year base extension of the program, because if we cannot reach a consensus on what the right answer is on 313s, at least our fallback position is let's extend it for 4 years. I've already talked to the Lieutenant Governor about that at the dais back in, I think it was Tuesday or maybe it was Monday. So I know that we're going to extend the program, but in what capacity? Will it be an extension that we won't have to worry about because it's got all the right things in it? Or do we still have to have more debate in a future legislative session? So let's just do a temporary extension to buy time for that debate and consensus building to occur. But we're working 313s. There's other areas I've worked as it relates to oil and gas and other things critical to our oil and gas industry. But because I came in late and I want to make sure that I get an opportunity for questions from folks, whether it's Matt or Ryan or anybody that's on, let me close and stand by for questions.
Thank you, Senator Birdwell. I believe Jennifer Manning is coming back on, and we do have a couple of questions in the chat box.
Sure.
Perfect. So same question that we had earlier for Calcasal. We have questions about property tax relief and any hope for property tax relief within with the government cash infusion for education and schools being the biggest part of the tax bill.
At this point, I don't know. Our hope is, Jennifer, that that'll be the case, but the governor's announcement was only yesterday with that 11.2 billion. I'm assuming that it will primarily go to all the districts as it relates to costs that they had incurred as a reimbursement. But in making the announcement of the infusion, there is still, in fact, in the very last line, it says that there's still a lot of enabling things that have to happen with that language that Chair Nelson, the Chair of Finance, Chair Taylor, the Chair of our Education Committee, and then our House counterparts of those respective chairs or those committees still have to make determinations of how to apportion those dollars. So, and look, anytime you get anything from Uncle Sam, there are not strings attached, there are cables attached. So much of that has got to be figured out, and we have very little time left at this point to make those determinations, take action in the conference committees on the budget to figure out what to do with that. The hope is there that we can do something, but with a short period of time and still having to learn what the rules of engagement are from the Department of Education, I don't know what that's going to look like.
Got it. Well, and that makes sense. I mean, we need a little time with it just coming out yesterday.
Yes, ma'am.
It's hard to put all those details together overnight. I get that.
Yeah.
All right. So we also had a question. Let's see. So with respect to Representative Kick and working on a full medical cannabis program, there have been bills for that don't get traction. What do you feel is the holdup?
I just don't think there's support. I have serious reservations about doing such. Serious reservations about that. And I just don't think that we're ready to go down the road of where Colorado and other states have gone. Serious problems with that. And that's the holdup, because I think there is serious reason to give great pause to doing something like that.
Got it. All right. Thank you. Let's see. I think you spoke related to COVID-related lawsuits and the work that you're doing in that area, which as business owners, we definitely appreciate that. It has been a rough go, and that is one thing for us to have to deal with. So we so appreciate your support in that arena.
Yeah. Well, Senator Hancock, as a business owner up in the mid cities, is a great advocate as the chair of Business and Commerce in the Senate, because he's lived much of, as a business owner, lived what's happened over the last 16 months as it relates to COVID. So, yeah,
that makes a big difference. All right, we have another question. Let's see. The Greater Waco area schools are thankful for the release of federal, well, actually, just a comment. The Greater Waco area schools are thankful for the release of federal funds to our districts to help accelerate student learning and offset expenses. And that is from Dr. Sharon Shields, who I'm sure you may very well know, one of our leaders in education here. So thank you, Dr. Shields, for sharing that comment. So
Yeah,
we do.
one other thing I would add, Jennifer, is one of the bills that came out of the House that's coming over to the Senate is HB 1195 that deals with making sure that Texans don't get surprise tax bills related to PPP and other federal dollars that arrived during the pandemic. It's kind of like when you think it's not a windfall, but when you think about some of the things that you got as a business to try to keep your business running, and then you get a bill later on that says you owe something in arrears because you thought it was a grant or relief, and so it's at the governor. It's actually on its way to the governor's desk. I'm very sure that he's going to sign that, but that'll help protect our business owners from surprise billing on taxes as it relates to the federal dollars that had come in, to make sure that margins or other taxes, that there's no surprises from Texas on that stuff. There might be a surprise from Uncle Sam, but I can't fix that.
Well, and that was a huge thing. I mean, with respect to PPP and, rolling that program out so quickly, and then, kind of waiting to see how things were going to happen from the IRS or from the SBA, and, putting all of those components together, that was a huge issue for a lot of our small businesses. And now getting that same relief at the state level on the franchise tax or margin tax is huge. So thank you for your work on that. That is a big relief to a lot of business owners.
You're welcome. Well, and you've got a great advocate coming up after me for Texas businesses, our Comptroller, Hager. I see he's on and listening, but he's muted, but he is a good man and a great Comptroller and a good friend of Texas and a good friend for me. So Glenn and I had some conversations early on in the legislative session about some of the challenges that we're seeing. And so you got a good man coming on, Jennifer.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate that. So any kind of parting thoughts as far as challenges or priorities that you have for the remainder of the year? Anything you want to share with us, specific to our area or even just in general?
Well, just in more general, you saw this week the numbers, the Census Bureau said that Texas will pick up 2 seats in congressional redistricting. I expect we'll have a special session on redistricting. When, I do not know. I don't think we'll have the totality or exact final numbers yet. I don't think we'll have that till after the session is over with. So at some point in the coming summer months, the governor will have to make a decision as to when to bring the legislature back to do redistricting. Certainly the counties, the cities, the geopolitical subdivisions have to go through that as well. So we'll all go through that process, but that's the one big issue that the legislature has not addressed in the regular session. We'll have to do it in a special session.
Got it. We have another question. If you still have time, we have another question.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So our prior board chair has asked what is going to happen with the legislation that intends to prevent cities, counties, school districts, etc., from hiring lobbyists. Any update on that?
I'm not sure. It's out of the Senate. It doesn't say you cannot hire a government affairs organization. It says that you cannot lobby the legislature. It was very clear in making sure that it was much tighter. Senator Betancourt had a much better bill than last session, because I'll give you an example. Grand Prairie, which I have a piece of. Grand Prairie has the most difficult challenge in coordinating intergovernmental issues than any of my other cities or geopolitical subdivisions. I mean, look, y'all do work with TxDOT, Rusty Kelly and his team do various integrating contractor things, and I want y'all to be able to continue to do that. Grand Prairie is a third of it's in Tarrant County, 2/3 of it is in Dallas County. It's in the North Texas Tollway Authority, the John Peter Smith Hospital District, the Parkland Hospital. I mean, the numbers of other geopolitical subdivisions that Grand Prairie sits inside of, you've got to make sure that those city entities and county entities can intercoordinate. And so much of instead of having to hire an entire division of intergovernmental operations people, Grand Prairie wants to be able to hire, whether it's a Rusty or somebody else, a Buddy Jones, to be able to do that work, because the economy of scales that come from that. So I don't know what the House is going to do. We're at that time of session where now you start to see what what can be worked and passed, what'll fall away that won't have movement. It may have movement in one body, but not another. This is where you start to see a lot of the sifting type of legislative sifting occurring. And I can't speak for what the House will do, but I know it's important to many of the voters of Texas, but also wanted to make sure that it was not going to hamstring your ability to intercoordinate various things that you have to intercoordinate with other governmental entities. Got
it. All right. Well, thank you for speaking to that. I know that's been a topic of conversation just as we're, kind of planning going forward. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Other questions, Matt? I saw you logged on. Did you have a question or opened your video? I think you're on mute, Matt. You're on mute.
There we go. Thanks.
There you go.
Hey, Senator, I just wanted to take a minute before we part and extend our warmest thanks to you and your team for all of your work on behalf of the Waco Industrial Foundation. We've been working through that issue with the foundation. We're very hopeful that we have a pathway forward that'll solve the challenge in front of us. You and your team have been instrumental, and we just want to express our thanks to you.
Well, thank you. The credit goes to Anna and you. Your subordinate success is your success, and with all the things that we're juggling here, having a great team is what helped. Your compliment is to Anna and my team, and I appreciate it. So I'll make sure she hears that and knows that.
We appreciate it, Brian. It's a serious issue, and I think we have a pathway, and we just really want you to know how much we appreciate your work.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Hooah.
Yeah. And I think that really, Senator Bardwell, is just kind of an overarching, your availability, just an overarching comment of you and your team is that, your ability to be available to us and help us when we need you, and just be a great friend to our community is invaluable. And we really do appreciate that. We know that we've got a great leader for us and a great advocate for our community, and we couldn't ask for more.
Hooah. I very much, Jennifer, I have no idea how much that touches my heart. Hooah. That's what they pay me the big bucks here for. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Y'all take care.
You have answered our questions. Have a great weekend. Thanks so much.
You do the same. Hooah. Thank you now. Y'all take care.
You too. All right. So thank you everyone for your questions and comments. That is super helpful, and we appreciate your sticking with us. We are moving on to our next speaker. I think he is coming on now, our Texas Comptroller, Glenn Hager. Let's see. There we are. Good morning. Good morning. I'm good. How are you, sir?
Great.
Great. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. I know so many of the people that are on our call know you well, and we've enjoyed our visits that you've had to our community before. Let me say a few words about you, though, for those that may not. Glenn Hager is Texas's Chief Financial Officer, the state's treasurer, check writer, tax collector, procurement officer, and revenue estimator. And I think we all know what a challenge this last 18 months, I guess, has been. I can only imagine. So thank you so much for your knowledge and for being so diligent in taking care of our state. Obviously, Texas is the ninth largest economy, and as being CFO of that entity per se, we know that is a challenge. Comptroller Hager is charged with maintaining the state's fiscal health, and having served in both the Texas House and Senate, he has gained a reputation for customer service, transparency in government, and conservative fiscal management. We are thrilled to have you with us today. We look forward to your comments. I know we have so many business owners that are on the call. We spoke a little bit about that earlier with Senator Bardwell, and obviously he speaks very highly of you, and we know that so many of the decisions that are happening with respect to our small businesses and their financial challenges are coming through your office and are under your leadership, and so we so appreciate your support in that arena. So I will turn it over to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, it's good to be with you, and like everybody, I wish we were in person, but so it's kind of a continuation here in 2021. So I know pretty soon we're finally going to get back to many more in-person meetings, and that's going to be exciting for all of us to actually see each other and have that opportunity. But it's good to come to you this way, and it was good to catch just a few words there on the back end of Senator Bardwell's comments to everybody. It's always good to see him. He's been a really good friend over the years, and someone that I've been able to truly count on as You all know Senator Birdwell, his word is his bond, and he's going to work for you every single day. Now, of course, he's a little bit of a stickler if he's dug in and got his opinions. It's hard to sway him sometimes, but he'll always continue to listen. So it's really good to see my good friend, Senator Birdwell. So let me tell you kind of a little bit about where we thought the economy was, where it's going, what we feel today. If obviously we go back a little over a year ago when COVID started, Texas was leading the nation in job creation. We were our typical pace of outpacing the national average in GDP growth. And then obviously came the dual headwinds in March of last year. We had been watching the COVID pandemic as it had moved across the rest of the world, knowing that obviously we're going to have some issues to deal with. And then there in March, that and the double headwind of lower oil and gas prices. So the question really became, we knew, unfortunately, Texas was going to have a recession. And that's not something that I look forward to using that word, but it's something that I had to talk about. The question really then became how deep, how wide, how long. Back then, I had made the comment several times that when you look at Texas, just to make a couple of points to remind everybody that every morning when you wake up, there's roughly about another 1,000 people that call Texas home every single day. So Texas has continued to gain in population, maybe not equally across all 254 counties, equally across all 12 economic regions, but the growth of Texas continues. As maybe some of the other speakers had noted or will yet today, is that over the course of the last decade, Texas has gained over 4 million people in population. We've also increased in population over 16%. So Texas continues to outpace that. But undoubtedly, we were going to have some headwinds and some economic challenges. Texas was at roughly a little over a year ago, February a year ago, we had gained 300,000 jobs in February as well as the prior 11 months. Strong, healthy growth, 3.4% unemployment. Texas, unfortunately, ramped up during the months of March, April, May, as many industry sectors, as we all know, that were impacted, disproportionately impacted. Those in the hotel, the leisure, hospitality, vacation area, restaurants, bars, those were impacted so much more. And some of them continue to be impacted. Whereas, say, for example, in the months of May and June of last year in economic activity, as people were at home working, teleworking, as well as trying to find things to do, either buying telecommunications equipment to work from home, buying gym equipment to work out because gyms were closed, or outdoor activities. And then people were at home, so they did remodelings to their homes. In those 2 months alone, people spent $7.3 billion more in and around their homes than what they did in the same 2 months of May and June of 2019. And so I make that point to show that on one end, hotels, vacation areas was extremely contracted. We're on the other end of remodeling because of shifting of the way people were doing business or spending some of those dollars. The stimulus dollars were put into people's pocketbooks, as well as of recent. We'll make an announcement on Monday of next week. A couple of different things. One, sales tax growth this month compared to last year. One, we're comparing ourselves to a negative month of last year. But then secondly, in part, people are spending additional stimulus check dollars. The economy is continuing to improve. So we'll announce a very healthy sales tax collection month in April of this year compared to April of last year. So if we go back again, kind of last year, we felt as though sales tax receipts, and just to remind people why I mentioned a little bit more on sales tax and other numbers, is because of your state budget, 1/3 is our federal dollars, 2/3 is our state dollars. Of the state dollar portion, tax collection is obviously the big piece of the state dollars. Of all tax collections, sales tax is 60% of all tax collections into the state treasury. And then automobile sales and rental tax, another 8%. And so those two pieces are the vast majority of revenue streams. Now, every revenue stream in the state treasury is extremely important. However, those really determine the health of the state treasury. So if you go back, look at prior events, we had felt like sales tax would be down negative about 10% for about a year, where in comparison, it had really been down about 5%. So that has helped the position of the state treasury as we entered legislative session. And one of the 3 constitutional duties that I have is monitoring the economy and telling the legislature how much money we think they will have to work with for the next 2-year state budget. So that state budget, to remind everybody, starts in September 1 of this year, and it runs for the next 24 months. So we're putting an extremely long outlook for a very complicated, diverse economy that the state of Texas makes up, the 9th largest economy in the entire world. And one of the things that I have been mentioning for literally about 14 months is that a couple more months of data will be extremely important for us to get a better glimpse of where the Texas economy is going. Now, on Monday, when I release those sales tax numbers, I'm also going to revise our revenue estimate that we provided to the legislature as we're constitutionally required the day before a legislative session. And in part, we didn't have some expenses we thought we would have in this current budget cycle. So that's going to help our cash carryover balance. And then sales tax receipts have been stronger than even we anticipated just earlier this year. A couple of reasons for that. One, that you and I continue to engage in the economy, the confidence level of consumers to engage in the economy, and part of that being driven by a much more successful vaccine rollout in Texas than what we were having just in January. Now, I always caution that in part is that while Texas is having a much more successful vaccine rollout, as well as the rest of the nation, if you look at other countries around the world, unfortunately, India, Brazil, some of Latin America are having very difficult times with the vaccine rollout, as well as increased number of cases in those states, hospitalization. So while our case count has gone down drastically, our hospitalization rates, I make those points because Texas is 19% of all the exports out of the United States. That means by far we're the largest exporting state, which in turn I point out is that we're very tied to the international economy. So things that happen in other parts of the world can have a drag effect on our economy. So we think the economy is a better optimistic outlook than what it was just a few months ago. Now, whether you agree or disagree with all the different stimulus dollars that have come out of Washington, D.C., the fact is those infusions of dollars, people are spending those. The savings rate has been up significantly for people over the course of the last 12, 13 months. So those dollars are available to be into the economy. So while there's a lot of uncertainty, and again, a couple more months of data a year ago were important, a couple more months today is still important. So there's more complexity and uncertainties today than there have been in the past. And while it's hard to estimate what this economy is going to do in another year or 2 years, we think the trajectory of the economy is much stronger. Optimism is better among people, among businesses. So therefore, I'll be raising the revenue estimate on Monday afternoon next week, officially telling the legislature that we're confident they'll have some more money, that they'll be able to work on the budget as they're working out the differences between the House and the Senate in Mclennan County, as well as in the city of Waco. For the last 3 months, sales taxes have been positive. Y'all have had good numbers there overall as the economy continues to go. To make a point that Mclennan County, as part of Central Texas region, roughly the take-home pay is about $52 million in that Central Texas region. And what does that mean? That region alone, if it was a state in our nation, don't get any ideas, but if it was, it'd be the 45th largest among all states. And I make that point because when you take the Central Texas region, South Texas, West Texas, East, North, East, South, all the different 12 economic regions, and you put them together, that's how you can see that Texas is literally the 9th largest economy in the world. So we think that the Texas economy is in much better shape than it was just earlier this year. The trajectory, however, with that being said, we do think there's a lot of uncertainty. And then I'll make one more comment and then I'll stop and open it up for questions. Those of you that live in Mclennan County, I highly suggest that you go to claimittexas.org. You can look it up online, claimittexas.org, because my office, when a business has some of your personal property, they can't find you, whether you put a utility deposit down, you moved, you didn't get your utility deposit back, could be an insurance proceed, could be a royalty payment, maybe an heir to a will, wide variety of things are called unclaimed property. Businesses look for you, they can't find you, they turn it over to the state treasury, the Comptroller's office, and at claimittexas.org, we have a listing of those properties. It's a simple process to go through. It gets a little more complicated when it's heirs to wills because we want to make sure that everybody's in agreement. And I know, wouldn't happen in your family, but sometimes people always don't agree. And so therefore, in Mclennan County, there's $22 million in unclaimed property. Last year alone, we returned over $300 million back to the rightful owners of people here in the state of Texas. And I'm proud that since I've taken office in 2015, 1st of January of 2015, we've increased the outflow of unclaimed property over 40%. And so I continue to mention that in all my speeches. I also encourage you that in a couple of years to remember to look again, because you say, well, I've already found it. Why would I want to go look again? Because businesses may have unclaimed property that they haven't turned in today and they turn that in every single year. So I would highly suggest that you go and look at unclaimed property almost on a yearly or every couple year basis. So with that, how about I'll stop, Jennifer, and we'll see what kind of questions people may have for me or some questions that you might have.
No, that sounds perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate that overview. It doesn't look like we have questions yet, but to our participants, please share your questions in our chat box, and I am happy to ask those. So just a couple of things. We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier with our different speakers. Can you speak a little bit about franchise tax, margin tax, how PPP is going to be treated? That's been a huge question on the minds of a lot of small business owners, and I think what we're seeing come down the pike is positive. So if you want to share about that.
Yeah. So on that particular, the legislature, at least this legislative session, we've worked with Senator Hancock and Representative Charlie Guerin. They've had legislation. They passed that legislation already to make sure that PPE dollars are not part of the franchise or margins tax, because that was not necessarily anticipated. And so we've worked with both of them. That's something that we had proposed a while back, brought it to them, worked with them. They've gotten that done. So that's already gone to the governor's office, which is good. So that'll become law. And if you look overall, I don't think there'll be any major structural changes in taxes this legislative session. There's always a few around the edges the legislature's looking at every single session, but nothing very substantial overall. Now, we do continue to bring updates, fairness. I'll give one example, for example, that I make a comment to most of the time in speeches and just didn't today. It may come up in the Q&A session. That last legislative session, we took to the legislature as a result of what was called the U.S. Supreme Court decision in the Wayfair case, where it had to do with taxability of internet sales. And so to me, from a fairness perspective, if you go to one of the local stores in Mclennan County in Waco and you purchase an item, guess what? You're going to have sales tax. Where if you go online to an out-of-state company that's selling to you, now we'd all like to not pay if we don't have to. However, with that, that's a competitive disadvantage to your local stores. And so from a fairness perspective, making sure there's equity across the system. So we worked with stakeholders, we took to the legislature and told them that here's two pieces of legislation. So those marketplace providers that people use as their platform to sell products, or remote sellers that sell directly to you and I, we had told them that we'd estimated it'd be another $500 million in the state treasury in a 2-year basis. Well, one, there were a lot more remote sellers and marketplace providers than we anticipated. And then who could have predicted in 2019 that Texas would be in a global pandemic and COVID starting in March of last year. And so their people started doing what online? Buying more items. And so therefore, in the first year, instead of $500 million to the state treasury, it was $1.3 billion. And in the last 17 months, it's just shy of $2 billion. And that also means local governments, that's an additional $550 million that local governments would not have received for very essential services of fire and police and running different issues in our own local communities. And so that's something that I mention frequently, because I'm very glad the legislature took that step, especially going into a pandemic when people were transitioning to so much more online purchases. And so therefore, I make that was an important change. So you don't have many of those very often, but there may be a few little tweaks or changes that they make this session, but I don't think there'll be anything substantial.
Great. Well, and just a comment, not a question, but just a comment from one of our participants, just saying thanks so much for the great update. And I think, it definitely seems like things are headed in the right direction, and definitely positive news compared to the estimates that you were sharing with us 12 months ago. So, we definitely appreciate you giving us that update. I mean, we can't say enough about how that, just is such an energy for our business community and for our city and county. So.
Yeah, 12 months ago, obviously people started thinking and wondering, what is going to be the state of economy? Is it going to be when I entered the Texas House in 2003 as a new member of the Texas House, we entered with a $10 billion shortfall, or just that awful legislative session in 2011 when Texas faced the current biennium was $4.5 billion short of what the legislature had appropriated in 2009. And then to keep those same basic level of services and not increase the state budgets, just maintain the status quo, was an additional 22.5. And so it was $27 billion, which was the first time we did not fund public education enrollment growth since World War II. When the legislature doesn't do that, you know, it was very, very significant. And so there was a lot of concerns that this session would be like that. I spent a lot of last year kind of trying to calm folks down that while we don't know exactly what's happening for the long term in the economy, it's not as bad as we think. We have a healthy economic stabilization fund balance or rainy day fund balance. You know, Texas has been very blessed with their oil and gas reserves here. And as a result of that, we put some of that money away. If the legislature doesn't spend any of that money, which I actually don't think that they will have to this legislative session, then in 2 years from now, if we're having this conversation, Jennifer, it'll have a little over $12 billion in it. And so therefore, when I make the announcement on Monday, because oil prices are a little bit higher, that means that their state savings account, as well as transportation, will get several $100 million more in the next 2 years than we originally anticipated. So it's good, the resiliency of the Texas economy. And I just continue to encourage people, you know, to keep engaging in the economy, doing things that make other people feel more comfortable and making sure that we keep moving the state economy in the right direction.
Perfect. Yeah, well, thank you. We so echo those words. We are definitely excited to see all of our businesses opening back up, and you know, definitely we know that it's been a challenging year for them, and just seeing all of these things kind of come to fruition and providing some of that confidence is a huge huge part of that puzzle. So, all right, other questions? Let's see. I think we've got our questions answered. Well, thank you so much for being here with us this morning, Glenn. It is.
Have a great weekend, and it's always good to be with the Waco Chamber.
Thanks. We appreciate your availability and being here with us always, but especially this morning and sharing with our group. So have a great weekend. Thank you. All right. Well, definitely positive news there. And so we will move on to our next speakers. We are going to have a little bit of a different format with our next presenters. And so we'll jump right into that. First of all, just reiterating Matt's original comments on TSTC as being our presenting sponsor this morning. Thank you so much for that. You are a great friend of the Chamber and a great part of our community, and we so appreciate your support today, but always. We truly value that relationship, so we're thrilled to have you here this morning. I want to introduce Joe Arnold, who is the Deputy Vice Chancellor and Executive External Relations Officer. So he is going to be having kind of a fireside chat with our Commissioner of Higher Education for the state of Texas. So thank you, Dr. Keller, for joining us this morning as well. Good morning to you both. For those of you that don't know Mr. Arnold, he heads the External Relations Division, including the Governmental Affairs Department at TSTC. He joined TSTC on October 1st, 2019, and he worked at that time as the Senior Government Affairs Manager for BASF Corporation in Austin prior to that. While there, he had co-founded the Texas Workforce Coalition and definitely is a leader in policy on workforce and education, which I think we all know is both of those topics are true focuses of the Chamber and true focuses of our community. And we so welcome your knowledge, and we welcome you this morning. Thank you, Joe, for being here.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning.
All right. Well, I will turn it over to you and let you introduce Commissioner Keller.
That would be a pleasure. So Commissioner Keller took the helm at the Higher Education Coordinating Board the same month and year as I did. And we were thrilled to see Commissioner Keller in that role. He brings to that role a great depth of understanding of higher education and of workforce development and of how to move Texans through the process and into great paying jobs. And that's music to our ears because that's what we thrive on. So Commissioner Keller, welcome this morning. And I look forward to having our chat and getting to spend some time together.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you and visit with the Waco Chamber. Is TSTC's, of course, been a great partner with us at the Higher Education Coordinating Board, and also I have to say thank you to the Waco Chamber. I appreciate the partnership with you all.
So why don't we just jump right into it, if you don't mind. There are a lot of things happening at the Capitol this time of year, and one of the things that was talked about since the 2019 legislative session was the 87th legislative session was going to be the higher ed session. and then COVID comes along and upsets the apple cart. Tell us a little bit about what's happening at the Capitol, and how the dealing with the effects of COVID and the COVID economy has changed what's happening in higher ed at the Capitol. Did it change your priorities?
So yes and no. I mean, there's certainly some things that COVID slowed down. As you mentioned, Joe, when I took this job about 18 months ago, the conversations that I had with Governor Abbott, with our legislative leadership, with our higher ed institutions, were all full of optimism. I mean, we had record low unemployment. The Texas economy was on fire. And we were all looking forward to a legislative session in 2021 that would be a companion to the work that they'd done in 2019 on public school finance. So in 2019, House Bill 3 made unprecedented changes in our public school finance system, and the legislature committed more than $5.5 billion a year in additional investments in our public schools. Now, one of the important changes in House Bill 3 was more attention to college, career, and military readiness. And so we were all looking forward to having a legislative session in 2021 that would be focused on, so what does the companion look like for higher education finance, so that we can make sure that the ways that we fund our colleges and universities is aligned with our state goals. And then COVID hit. And so all of the sudden we went from having one of the strongest economies in our state history to having millions of Texans file for unemployment, having our institutions and our communities reeling. It's hard to overstate the impact of COVID-19 on our colleges and universities. It's been the greatest disruption to their operations since the Second World War. So we just haven't really seen anything like that, because all of the sudden they had additional costs with having to send, many of our universities had to send students home, convert almost all their courses to online delivery within the space of a couple of weeks, convert a lot of their operations to online, as many of other kinds of companies did. And then implement new kinds of remediation strategies to keep people safe. And at the same time, they saw a collapse of multiple revenue streams. So not just from tuition and fees and housing and those kinds of things, but from events, from philanthropy, from athletics. So the losses to the colleges and universities were in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And so the federal stimulus funds that came in this last year were really important and really helpful for colleges and universities. But about half those funds that came in were earmarked for emergency grants for students, and about half for the institutional operations, and didn't begin to cover the cost. So important, don't want to discount them entirely, but didn't pick up the full extent of the disruption.
And there are federal funds that still haven't been drawn down, especially for higher ed, that I understand from the Legislative Budget Board that they're really not sure what the strings are or how that money can be used and spent. Any idea from you as to how that process is going and what it looks like, and maybe when it will be available to colleges?
One of the differences between the public ed and the higher ed side on the federal stimulus front is that the Department of Education opted in the CARES, so the way the policymakers made the decisions and the way the Department of Ed is administering the stimulus is in CARES Act, and in the last two rounds of funding, the bulk of the stimulus funds for higher education institutions just went directly to the institutions, not through the states. So we weren't consulted on what the formula should look like. We weren't consulted about how we would align these stimulus funds with state priorities. The department decided what the formula would be, and they drove the allocations directly to the institutions. There's some smaller pool of funds that went to the governors in the first couple of rounds of stimulus funds. So the governor's emergency education relief dollars, and those have been very important. So the first allocation of those GEAR dollars by Governor Abbott and legislative leadership were for higher education. So last summer, the governor and legislative leadership committed $175 million to higher education. And so we were working closely with them and with our institutions, so those dollars could be used to make sure we didn't have to make cuts in student financial aid, that we could provide some additional emergency aid to students. Also, we had tens of thousands of students that were on the verge of being disenrolled from colleges and universities last fall. And so we were able to work with the institutions, and within about 10 days, get tens of millions of dollars out to institutions to keep those students enrolled and on track. And then what I was particularly excited about is that the governor and legislative leadership also set aside $46.5 million around financial aid, specifically with reskilling and upskilling. So even in the midst of the crisis this last year, we were already beginning a conversation about higher education's got a special role and responsibility to play in driving the recovery of our state economy. In fact, I'd say that higher education is the point of the spear for economic recovery. So that's not just through degree programs, but also short-term workforce credentials. Of course, just a program of a few months can make a world of difference for helping people get back on their feet, get back into the economy, and help drive the recovery of the economy. There's not generally been a lot of financial aid that's been available for those short-term workforce credentials. So it was very important to see the governor and legislative leadership commit $46.5 million and as an initial step towards supporting Texans in reskilling and upskilling.
Speaking of reskilling and upskilling, there's a major piece of legislation this year. It's coined the True Bill, and the True Bill is something that will have a major impact on getting people from low or decent paying jobs into really good paying jobs. And a lot of folks, I don't think, understand that you can do that really without committing to another degree or 2 more years in school. Can you tell us a little bit about the True Bill?
Sure. But just to underline a point you just made, Joe, that one of the things that's different now in the way that we need to think about the role that our colleges and universities play is it's not just achieve that credential and you're done. So we're really in a economy already where folks are going to have to reskill and upskill throughout their careers. And so I think that traditional distinction, are you doing workforce training or are you doing a degree? And I think that's breaking down very fast. And so I think we're going to see more and more folks with degrees who are picking up other kinds of credentials, short-term credentials, even concurrently with when they're as they're completing their degrees, and also folks going back multiple times. We're already seeing that. So one of the lessons that we learned from the investments that we made, even in the last 6 months of 2020, from that allocation of CARES Act dollars by the governor, is that there was a little slower uptake than we had hoped for in folks being able to take advantage of that financial aid. When we looked at what was going on, we have a capacity problem. Just to be candid, we don't have enough seats available in the kinds of high quality, high demand programs that are going to help people take advantage of the kinds of good jobs that are available. So if you zoom out and you look at the current recession one of the striking things is how strong that correlation is now between unemployment and the kinds of credentials that people have. So this ends up being some folks will argue the most inequitable recession we've ever seen, because if you don't have a post-secondary credential, you're experiencing much deeper recession, slower recovery than folks with degrees and certificates. So even though we have individuals understand that, and they understand they might need some additional education and training to be able to get another job in the same industry or change career paths and get into another industry, we're not enrolling people as quickly as we need to. Part of that's on the demand side, where folks don't understand that these programs are available. They may not understand what the line of sight is to good job opportunities. That's something that we're working on right now with institutions across the state and with our state leadership. And that's going to be a high priority over the next several months. But we also have a problem on the supply side that we need to be candid about, that we need more seats in these programs. So one of the pieces of legislation that's under discussion right now, it's already passed the Senate, and Senate Bill 1102 would create a grants program through our agency for seed capital for two-year colleges, community colleges, technical colleges, to be able to stand up high-value programs or just expand capacity in existing programs so we can get more people reskilled and upskilled more quickly.
And that's very important. And talking about the capacity issue, we were at capacity at TSTC before COVID hit. COVID and our COVID protocols that we had to put in place to keep everyone safe, it exacerbated that. When you're doing technical training and your lab space has a lot of heavy equipment in it, and it's expensive to stand that up and to maintain that. One of the bills, there have been a couple of bills filed on tuition revenue bonds that would allow us money to invest in new lab space. And there are 7 tuition revenue bond requests from TSTC, and dozens more from other higher ed institutions across the state. I understand that bill has passed out of committee and is headed to the floor in the House. But there's not a companion for that in the Senate, and I understand that they're looking for non-traditional monies that they may be able to use to fund these. Do you see much hope for tuition revenue bonds or for capital spending in higher ed?
So I think, of course, we'll see. There's about a month left to go in the session, and a lot that would need to happen. There's a lot of hurdles that would need to be cleared, but the needs are certainly there. So as you mentioned, Joe, I mean, we have acute need for different kinds of facilities to educate more people to higher standards, and also just the way that we're delivering education has changed pretty dramatically. So we're going to need to convert some traditional classrooms and auditoriums into more flexible, more modular lab spaces. So we're just at the front edge of this historic transformation in higher education in Texas, and that's going to entail some capital investments for us to retool our facilities for new ways of teaching and learning, and also to make sure that we're going to be able to deliver the kind of high quality programs that we need.
Absolutely. It's we went into COVID with a skills gap and a shortage of highly skilled workers able to fill a lot of these jobs, and COVID has only exacerbated that. So you mentioned earlier that higher education was the tip of the spear, and I think that's that point can't be made enough. That investment in higher ed is the first step on economic recovery after COVID. Are there any? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so what we've seen in Texas and across the country is it's really striking, and it's been faster than anybody expected, is changes that were already underway in the economy. So the economy was already moving in the direction of sort of higher skills, higher credentials, so that's been dramatically accelerated over this last year. And so again, what we see is much deeper recession, much steeper unemployment for Texans without post-secondary credentials. And so while we have tens of thousands of good jobs being created in Texas right now, what we see in a fundamental dilemma we've got to confront is increasing distance between the kinds of skills that those jobs require and the kinds of skills and credentials that a lot of Texans, especially displaced workers, have right now. And so this is not a 2-year versus 4-year university kind of thing. This is all hands on deck, where we are going to need to serve many more Texans than we've ever effectively served before, to help people reskill, upskill, get back on their feet, drive the recovery of our economy, and also ensure that we're going to be competitive for the long term.
The gap is there, and it's often referred to as the skills gap. But is there a gap between higher education and the business community? Is there a way to first, is there a need, and second, is there a way to bring those two folks together for better good?
So I think this is something that that tends to get painted with too broad a brush. Is there a gap between higher education and business? There are some places, but there's actually some places that are national models, right? So TSTC works intimately with employers in the design of programs. Many of our community colleges. I was just yesterday in a experimental software development lab that Austin Community College is standing up with the Army Futures Command to create new organic software development capabilities for the Army that they don't have right now, through that partnership with the community college. Our universities as well, and particularly in our engineering programs, our accounting programs, our computer science programs, architecture. It's hard to argue that there's a gap, that there's a disconnect. I think I think the issue is more that we need to do that at much greater scale than we do now across a wider swath of our programs. We need to make sure that there are better feedback loops that are sort of take what we're doing in these more kind of pockets of innovation and excellence. We need to extend that across more of our programs for more institutions and more students. And then we need better advising tools so that students have a clearer line of sight to good jobs. And so we're working on this across all fronts. So I'd highlight, like right now we're working in close partnership make sure that it's only the ones and chambers to design and stand up new advising tools. New student intake portal will be rolling out over the next several months to make it easier for folks to know, here are the kinds of opportunities that are available. Here's how those connect to different kinds of career paths and job opportunities. Because what we've heard from Texans when we polled Texans who have some college, no credential, or displaced workers, is even when they know they might need additional education and training, they're not sure about what's available. They're not sure about what kinds of support structures they're going to be able to tap into. And so we need to do a better job of making those visible and streamline students' paths into these programs through to achieve high quality credentials with that clear line of sight to good jobs.
So one of the things that was done under your predecessor was a plan called 60 by 30 to try and get 60% of the of Texans with some sort of a degree by 2030. Given the nature now, and you just mentioned the fact that we have a need for skills and ongoing education and lifelong learning, is that do we need to revisit that 60 by 30? Is that still the right way to measure that, or what do we need to do to make sure that we're getting Texans the right education for the right jobs?
Yeah, so already before COVID hit, we had already started talking about the need to refine and update our plan. Because as you mentioned, Joe, the original 60 by 30 plan was an important, it was an important shift and progress on one front, where it was changing the conversation from just being about access to higher education to being a little more focused on completion. But it's not going to be enough to say we need 60% of our young working population to achieve any kind of post-secondary credential. We're going to need to push ourselves to, first of all, to talk about, well, what are those credentials that are especially going to be in demand, especially going to be important and valuable for individuals, for our communities, for the state as a whole. And also, we, I think, are increasingly aware that we're not just talking about that young traditional age population anymore. We need to serve adults better and be more intentional about that. And so we have launched an initiative over these last several months with our appointed board, with strong support from our policymakers, and in partnership with Texas Philanthropy to refine and update our plan. So we've had now 10 different regional listening sessions across the state. We have more than 500 leaders across the state weigh in and share their reflections about what they think is working well, what they think we need to improve. And in about a month, in early June, we'll have a virtual statewide convening where we pull people back together, reflect what we've heard. And so we're going to be rolling out some updates to the plan, hopefully to refine and focus our efforts, focus our energy, and help focus our resources on these kinds of issues you and I are discussing this morning.
Well, speaking of the discussion this morning, I have had a wonderful time and a huge fan of yours and the work that you do and the vision that you have. But I see we're bumping up on our time, so we should probably stop and see if there are any questions for you that you can answer. So pitch it back to Jennifer.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. Obviously, we have a significant focus on education in our community and really realize that it is a primary cog to our economic recovery, not just here locally, but across the state and the nation. So thank you so much for speaking to that. We do have a question. Specific programs that you guys are thinking of in particular that are of the highest needs. So anything that you've already kind of seen a continual trend in conversations regarding those specific programs.
Yeah, so there's certain kinds of, so we have spent time working in close partnership with the Workforce Commission and Texas Education Agency under the umbrella of what's called the Governor's Tri-Agency Initiative to try to understand who's lost jobs, what are the kinds of occupations that are absorbing folks, where do there seem to be these pinch points, and what are some of those critical sectors and critical occupations. There's some variation region to region. So like in some regions, it's going to be healthcare and energy and advanced manufacturing. Other places, it's going to have a little different flavor. That's going to where technology is going to be even more important. I would say in general, across sectors, though, there's critical IT positions that we are having a lot of trouble filling. We're having a lot of trouble filling positions for software developers, for other kinds of IT professionals. For engineers, we have some acute shortages. So I was talking to a vice president from one of the major Texas companies the other day, and what he told me that was pretty striking is that just Lockheed could hire every engineering graduate from Texas A&M, which is our largest engineering program, every year and still not have enough engineers. That's one company. We see similar shortages across the state in our nurses, of course, that we've all experienced some of the fallout of that, especially over this last year. So I think again, we have I don't want to suggest that we don't have a robust higher education infrastructure. We do, but it was really built in a different time to serve different kinds of needs, and just the needs of our communities and needs of our employers have changed pretty dramatically, and that's accelerated over this last year. So this is a time where we need to make some smart strategic investments to help retool those institutions and help engage and serve many more Texans than we've ever been able to effectively serve before.
Right. Well, thank you so much for doing a deep dive on that. I mean, we continue to hear from our business owners and our chamber members that they, have this workforce, shortage, and we know that is just truly a focus on education that we need, and the right education. And so having leaders like yourselves in that field, that's definitely heading us in the right direction. So we so appreciate that.
Thank you. And again, really appreciate the conversation, the partnership with you all and your counterparts and chambers across the state is going to be so important as we chart the course forward to make sure we've got those credentials that really have the value that individuals are going to need. And then, of course, you've got the advantage of great higher education leaders who are also great partners, and with TSTC, and I saw Jeanette McCown on there briefly. Is a great partner. I'm a big fan of their work, and of course at Baylor has also been a great partner as an independent institution, but also a strong thought partner with us. So thanks for your partnership. I look forward to working with you all closely, especially over these next several months.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Commissioner Keller. I appreciate it, Joe, so much for you leading that conversation. We appreciate you both. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all so much. I think we're pretty close to being on schedule, and we have our next speaker in the queue. Let's see if we can move forward. There we are. Good morning. Good morning, Secretary Hughes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. I know you've had a busy week in the Valley, so thanks so much for making time for us this morning virtually. We look forward to seeing you in person, but we are grateful to have you here virtually this morning.
It doesn't take a lot to get me to Waco, so anytime. Just sorry I couldn't make it work this morning.
Good. Well, thank you. Let me do a quick introduction for you, and then I will turn the floor to you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So as we mentioned, we have the honor of having Secretary of State Ruth Hughes with us this morning. She was sworn in as the 113th Texas Secretary of State on August 19th, 2019. She is one of 6 state officials named by the Texas Constitution to form the executive department of the state. And so in addition to serving as Texas's chief elections officer, she also has many other roles, including senior advisor and liaison to the governor for border and Mexican affairs. And I think that was a focus earlier this week with your trip to the Valley. Secretary Hughes has a proven record of public service, most recently having served as chair and commissioner representing employers at the TWC. And prior to her appointment, she worked as a licensed attorney and a small business owner. She also previously served at the Office of the Texas Attorney General as the Director of Defense Litigation. Secretary Hughes, thank you so much for being here with us today, and I will turn the floor over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for that kind introduction. And I want to thank the Greater Waco Chamber for extending this invitation to speak to all of you today on why Texas leads the nation for business and sharing some of the priorities and things that my office has been working on. We really appreciate everything that your organization does to promote Texas as the destination for business. You're also all very well represented here during our legislative session and throughout the year. Constantly I'm running into Senator Birdwell and of course Representatives Casal and Anderson are here making sure that your voices are heard at the Capitol. So really appreciate and can confirm for you that they're doing a great job. Your members play such an invaluable role in conveying the needs and priorities of the greater Waco area to our elected officials here in Austin. And your voice and your opinions make such a difference in the decision-making process at the Capitol. So I thank all of you for your continued advocacy. Texas has long been a national economic leader by fostering an environment that's business-friendly, low in taxes, and reasonable in regulations. We have stood out among other states because of our ability to attract top talent and foreign investment, along with our world-class workforce and access to educational opportunities. In fact, and I know many of you may be aware of this, if we were our own country, and some folks think we are, it would be the world's ninth largest economy. We have been the top exporting state for the last 19 years, and we lead the nation in other ways too. We're the top destination for foreign direct investment. We're home to more than 1,500 foreign corporations, 32 foreign trade zones, and of course, home to the best cities to live in the United States and the second largest civilian workforce in the nation. Our status as an economic leader is also made possible in large part because of our trade relationships, interstate, cross-border, and international. These relationships rely heavily on the robust transportation infrastructure network that we offer in Texas. And with Greater Waco's central location in Texas, the US and North America offers companies an advantage in getting products to and from markets in a timely manner. I-35 is a key link in the national transportation network of highways, and Greater Waco, of course, is also connected by 2 Class 1 railroads and 3 airports. So you're very strategically located, and that makes us yet more, attractive to so many businesses that come here. It's for these reasons and many more. There's no better place in the United States to do business than in Texas. And we lead not just at home, but abroad as well. The economic footprint of the Lone Star State extends far beyond our national borders to countries across the globe through trade and foreign investment. Our reputation as a national and global leader is reliant upon the relationships that we've fostered both here at home and abroad. Governments and businesses the world over understand and appreciate the strong value proposition that our state offers. And as a result, we've seen tremendous investments in the energy and business sectors in Texas. With the ratification last summer of USMCA, we expect to see even more growth and opportunities in Texas across all sectors. And it's not just our current industries that benefit from our economic climate in Texas. Companies worldwide and in other states are relocating here. As an example among many, within the past year, we've seen Tesla, Hewlett-Packard, and Encore move to Texas since the pandemic began. And just this month, Ohio company Great Lakes Cheese announced they'll establish a new packing and distribution facility in Abilene, which will create 500 jobs and bring another $185 million in capital investment. These kinds of investments, expansions, and relocations serve as a continued testament to the unique draw that Texas offers those seeking to do business in our state. But of course, we know it's not just out-of-state investments and relocations that are key to our success. Our success is also heavily reliant on communities like yours and entrepreneurs and small business owners who help make up the backbone of our state's vibrant economy. We are home to 2.7 million small businesses that employ 4.7 million people and make up 45% of our state's private sector workforce. Waco had 2 of the top 25 economic development projects in 2020 nationwide. You had Amazon and Endosys, and the projects account for 9% of the top 25 job creation. So the growth is real, and we're very grateful, and we recognize the importance of the greater Waco area. And of course, you're home to institutions like Baylor that play such a vital role in our state's success by helping to educate the workforce of the future, providing that quality education alongside a reputation that employers trust and respect. Waco has had a considerable economic impact of more than $700 million to the Waco metropolitan area and the state of Texas. And I need to, of course, mention TSTC, which is a wonderful institution. I know you've just heard from them. They're making such a difference in ensuring that we train our future workforce to meet the growing demands of industry going forward. And of course, businesses and institutions here in the greater Waco area, like Sanderson Farms, Pilgrim's Pride, Cargill, Providence, Healthcare Network, Baylor Scott and White, together also help to employ thousands of Texans and produce goods and services that impact our everyday lives for the better. So thank you all for the role that you play in contributing to both our state and our nation's success. Organizations like the Greater Waco Chamber, the Governor's Office, the Secretary of State's Office are all strong avenues and resources for investors and businesses alike to find success here in the Lone Star State. Because of COVID-19, we recognize that many in our state have been affected, both businesses and workers alike. Know that help is available as our state faces this unprecedented challenge together. Early on, we learned of supply chain challenges in Texas and Mexico due to the different approaches our governments were taking in response to COVID-19. In my role as Chief International Officer, we were able to facilitate discussions between parties to find solutions for some of these challenges that were presented in order to keep the supply chains operating during these difficult times. It's a great honor to serve in this role and to support Texas industries and our interests, both here at home and abroad. Please know you can always reach out to us if we may be of assistance in this regard. As Texans, we've never been afraid of coming together to face our challenges, and COVID-19 is no exception. We're going to overcome this as we have others and emerge united, even stronger. As a business owner, please know that our office is always available to help you with business filings, office seals, notarizations, and other business-related functions. You can learn more about what's available on our website at sos.texas.gov. And as Jennifer mentioned, I was in the Valley earlier this week, and that's because one of the things that we were able to accomplish, even with the pandemic, was to complete the Border Transportation Master Plan, which is a plan that we worked on with TxDOT, and TxDOT approved that plan on March 25th. And it identifies all the infrastructure projects along our border area, which ultimately impacts the connectivity of all our interstate highways. So that's a plan that's available online and that will show what the impact will be if we focus on these projects and prioritize these infrastructure needs now versus what delays might look like in 2050. So that's something that if you have an opportunity to review it, you may find of interest. And of course, I serve as the Chief Elections Officer, providing oversight for our elections is one of my key responsibilities. We know civic engagement is essential to our democracy, and we were certainly challenged in the pandemic to move forward, but there was never a question that elections were going to proceed. It is the bedrock of our democracy, and the counties, the 254 counties across our state, with all their workers and all their volunteers, put in tireless efforts to make sure that they could continue with elections as needed, including the general election of 2020. We had the highest turnout in 28 years, with 11.2 million Texans exercising their rights to vote. Our election officers were tasked with not only the challenges of making sure that they protected the integrity of the process, but also making sure they protected the health and safety of workers, volunteers, and voters. And so they learned all sorts of new languages, a new language like many of us with respect to PPE, hand sanitizing, social distancing, but they really rose to the challenge. I had the opportunity to go to Mclennan County during early voting and watch the operations and get to visit and see how things were going. And I know the dedication is really inspiring, and you're really in good hands. I know now you have Jared Goldsmith as the elections administrator. And please keep in mind, if you haven't already voted during early voting, that tomorrow, May 1st, is a uniform election. And so you'll have things on the ballot regarding your school district, board trustees, city council races. Please make sure that you have your voices heard and that you take the opportunity to vote if you haven't already. And finally, I do want to mention a program out of my office not everyone is familiar with, but I think it's incredibly important for our state and for our communities, and a really good opportunity for businesses to be wonderful corporate citizens free of charge. And that is the Texas Businesses Against Trafficking, also known as TBAT. The legislature passed a statute that allows businesses to privately partner with the Secretary of State's office to become members of TBAT. What that means is that they have recognized the importance of joining in the fight to combat human trafficking in our state. And so it's a 2 or 3 page application that indicates that you have policies in place, public awareness campaigns, and a lot of training or some training so that your employees can recognize the signs of human trafficking, hopefully to either call it in if you see something or to prevent something like that from happening. Unfortunately, Texas has a large population or problems with human trafficking, and we want to change that. We don't want to be second in the nation for human trafficking. So we really need to come together to combat this on all fronts. And so we have a lot of great work and a lot of statute or actually legislation on the criminal side. But if we can get together on the civil side, if we can get this partnership, if your business can have the digital TBAT logo and the vinyl storefront logo that shows that you do not tolerate that and that you make sure that your employees are on the lookout, that's a wonderful way that we can partner together. We'd certainly welcome that. So please go to our website or give us a call if you want to get more information about it. I know TABC, when they inspect bars, are also providing training, and their video is something that can count towards your public awareness or your training. And again, we can talk to you more about it, but it is free of charge, and we would love to have you as a member if it's something that you have policies in place or you want to have policies in place to be able to join us in that fight. So in closing, Texas leads the nation for business because we've laid the groundwork under Governor Abbott's leadership for economic investment and job growth by establishing that business-friendly environment that encourages growth rather than stifling it. By continuing to work collaboratively and fostering an environment that encourages economic growth and prosperity, we can help to build an even brighter future for our state. Oh, and one last thing, I do want to congratulate you all on Baylor's fantastic NCAA March Madness championship run, which saw the men's team win the national title and the women's team reach the Elite Eight. Our state is very proud of you all. Sick 'em. Thank you all for your time and attention today. Please enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you for allowing me to spend this time with you this morning.
Thank you so much, Secretary Hughes. We really appreciate you taking the time, and thank you for your sweet words about our championships. All right. All right. We will move on to our next and final speaker, Ryan Lindsay, who is our Public Policy Committee Chairman. Thanks for joining us today, Ryan. We appreciate it. And Ryan and I, many of you may not know, Ryan and I grew up together, and the way that I was going to introduce him versus the way that I've been instructed to introduce him are two very different things, but I'll go with what's been written. So anyway, thanks really for joining us, Ryan. We so appreciate your work on behalf of the Chamber and our community. Ryan serves as the Vice President of Government Relations for CRH America's Materials, where he oversees all local, state, and federal advocacy efforts and political engagement. He is a great friend to the Chamber, a great leader in our community, and just a great personal friend. So great to see you, Ryan, and we appreciate you making our final remarks as we close out our virtual Waco Day in Austin.
Good morning, Jennifer. The greatest basketball player in the history of China Spring High School and maybe Mclennan County, Jennifer Whedon, now Manning. The reason she can tell a lot of those stories is she's a lot older than I am, and she actually used to babysit, and so that's why she has a lot of those stories, right? So,
that's right.
Yeah. Good morning to everybody. Thanks for being on. Everybody said thank you for a lot of things this morning. We had a great group of folks speaking. But the folks that logged in today, that's a big deal. And engaging and being able to tell our story is what this is all about, right? Waco has never had a better story to tell than we do right now. And this repetition and being at the table, we tell our folks a lot with CRH, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? You got to be at the table and you got to be telling your story. Things like Waco Day are important to be at the table and tell your story. So this engagement is key. So thanks to everybody out there this morning for engaging, for being on. Thanks for the sponsors for making this possible. This messaging and this consistent messaging year over year, time and time again, is what builds credit in Austin and other places. So thank you. We are very active from a public policy standpoint with the chamber. I have the privilege of leading that committee and am thrilled to do so. I'd like to tell you a little bit about that as we work on a platform from year to year on things that are important for the business community. I will tell you that our number one focus is to protect and promote the businesses of Waco and the Waco business community. That is our single litmus test. We are apolitical. We are only truly concerned about protecting and promoting Waco business. So I'd like to thank a few folks for being involved. We have several different subcommittees that report up to that public policy committee. So one of these may pique your interest, and we'd love to have you reach out to me or to Matt or to Jennifer at the chamber or to one of these folks individually. If you're not currently serving on a subcommittee, we would love to get you plugged in somewhere. Scott Salmons heads our business climate committee. Economic Development Committee is headed by Sarah Roberts. Our Education Committee is led by Rick Tullis, and thankfully he has Frank Graves also helping him, so they're able to get something done. Our Healthcare Committee is headed by Ben Lacey. Transportation is Brad Kincaid, and our Water Subcommittee is headed by Matt Phillips. So appreciate those folks taking leadership positions. And again, would love to have any of you that are not currently involved. We need to have you involved, right? There's only two types of folks on this call, those that are plugged in and those that are going to be plugged in. So take time to reach out and get plugged in. Again, we must continue to tell our story. Really, that is our number one charge here, is protecting and promoting Waco business and continuing to tell our story. So Jennifer, that is the message from the public policy committee side this morning. We've seen a lot of issues, as Kyle alluded to, and then Senator Birdwell. There are a number of things moving through the legislature right now in a different sort of, albeit different sort of legislative session, and certainly good news from the Comptroller for a lot of us with what revenues are going to look like. But we look forward to what lie ahead. We look forward to Sine Die, and then looking at redistricting in October, it appears. And that was one of our key platforms, was to make sure that we held Waco together from a congressional side, and then also from some of these state house seats. So that's all from my side, Jennifer. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this morning. And again, really proud to be involved with the chamber. We stand on the shoulders of a lot of folks that have come before us, and folks like David Lacey that were involved in a long time and helping tell that story. But it's up to us now to continue to move that forward. So encourage you to be involved and to be plugged in. You cannot complain about anything if you're not at the table helping tell the story and helping beat the drum. So thanks so much, Jennifer. Good to see you.
Thanks. Great to see you too, Ryan. We appreciate you so much. Just one final thanks to our presenting sponsor, TSTC. MCC is our gold sponsor. Capstone Mechanical as our silver sponsor, and Hobbs Bonded Fibers as our bronze sponsor. We are thrilled to always have you on our team, and your commitment to the chamber is unwavering, and we so appreciate that, and have really appreciated it even more with the last 18 months as the challenge that it's been. So thank you so much for your continued support. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning. We so appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you in person soon. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.